Where did fly fishing begin for you?
I was just a little tacker, and my mother's people had a farm in Gippsland with a little creek running through it, and they'd milk cows in the morning but go down slashing ferns in the afternoon. Down in the creek I found this incredible creature, this beautiful thing, and with the help of my two uncles I flipped it out on the bank and rushed home with it. It was into the fry pan and everybody had a taste, and I felt like I was 10 feet tall and I was just a kid. But that night an uncle of mine came out with a polished box, and inside it was a split cane fly rod made in the exotic place of England, and it was wrapped with silken bindings, and it was the most gorgeous thing, and it was one of the family's treasures. And so, steeped in all of this, I became inventive and tried to make a fly rod for myself out of anything I could find. And of course, as time progressed, I eventually succeeded, and I made a fly rod. And by then I was a teenager, but I made a fly rod, and I watched a person catch a fish on a fly one day down on the river. Suddenly it all came clear to me what I needed to do, and that's when the rot set in, and that's when the obsession started, and it's been downhill ever since.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the obsession. Like, what are you obsessed when you fly fish? What's the obsessive part?
Well, it's about deception. You've taken bits of feather and fluff and fur and wrapped it around a hook to resemble an insect. So first of all, you've got to know about the insects, and you've got to understand how they work and why fish eat them the way they do, and why they can be selective about which ones they'll eat. And then you try to represent that in colour, size and shape by assembling materials, which is a totally artificial system, and then place it on the water in the hope that you've pressed all the buttons for the fish and he's going to come and take it. When that happens, it's a buzz. You've succeeded in this psychological battle with a wild creature that you've induced him to come and eat your representation. So it's a whole process.
Let's talk about how it started with like GV fly fishing, how that all came about.
So it's hard to determine exactly what the spark was. It was probably discovering someone who had the same degree of obsession that I had, which was David. And I said to David, why don't we start a drift boat service and a guiding service, and looking to the future, make it into a business. And when it involved fishing, it didn't take much convincing, I can tell you, because we were both enthusiastic about it. Both of us by this time had a lifetime of experience, and so we were able to apply everything we knew in providing a service for other people, which takes us to the same places as we're wanting to go ourselves.
Yeah, so it doesn't really feel like a job, does it?
Yeah, well, it can rain, the weather can be foul. It involves difficulties of making sure that people are satisfied that we've provided for them the very best experience that they can have.
And what kind of experience do you want to give customers, or did you want at the start? What was your goals?
Our goals are twofold. One is that we want to advance everybody's skills. So if we're there at their shoulder to help them as a guide, and we can see that maybe a slight tweak on what they're doing will increase their level of success, that's one aspect of it, improving their skills. And taking people from square one who have never fly fished and introducing them to a system that allows them to be able to become immersed in it themselves in the correct way, rather than learning by accident and trial and error and taking a lifetime to learn stuff that we can help them with in a very short period of time, and jump the hurdle and become experienced fly fishers far more rapidly and build on their skills. But it's a learning process that never stops, even for us. And you can take a 90-year-old out and they can learn something new in a day, which is wide open to improving your own satisfaction in what you're doing.
Yep, that's great. How long does it take to become a good fly fisher?
Well, I'm in my 78th year and I haven't made it yet. I got a long way to go, which means I've got to go fishing more often, and I've got to do it more often to improve those things that I know I'm not good at. Even though I'm probably better than a lot of people in many of those things, I'm still not good enough. It's never-ending learning. It's constantly opening up and allowing you to explore different avenues of this great sport.
Why should people go with a guide?
They need to go with a guide to short-circuit that process. Now, you can learn it by trial and error, and much of what we've learned, David and I, and later Anthony, has been because we've been there doing it all the time. We can amass that learning pretty quickly. But if you only get a couple of weekends a year when you can go out and, you know, there's the obligations to family and kids and career and domestic relations and all the rest of it, and so you get limited time. And to manage your way through all of that learning process means that you need to go fishing more often. And so that's what we do. We provide that accelerated learning for people.
That's great. You kind of touched on it before, but I guess what is fly fishing all about?
It's about history, it's about literature, it's about relationships with other people, but most of all it's about an interface between yourself and nature and a wild creature. And the great thing about it is we do no harm. So what we can do is deceive that fish into thinking that what we're offering them is his natural food, and that involves teasing and tricking and all sorts of interaction with a wild creature, and they'll swim away.
What kind of things are involved with being a guide?
You have to be able to read where your client's at. Sometimes you've just got to transport them to where they're going to be successful, where you know there is the chance that they'll be successful, and stand back and let them go for it. But what you've done is express them into that situation. Other times you may have to assist them with improvements on their skill, or demonstrate or show them carefully why you're doing something, so that they can imagine for themselves why and how they're doing these things. And then often you simply have to get out of their way. So it's companionship, it's security for the person being guided. I'm watching for snakes, not them. I'm dodging the next willow branch as we're drifting down the river while they fish. So we're a backup for them and a support for them, and we're there to help as much as we possibly can. And that takes care of all that other stuff that you would otherwise have to do, waste your good fishing time.
What did you get out of being a guide?
I get a lot of discovery out of being a guide. Everybody's different. Everybody has different needs. Everybody relates differently to what we're doing. Each person has their own personal insights into it. And so you could say relationships. Some of the people that I guide are 90 years of age and some are 13 or 14 years of age. But each of them with their own special needs that I'm able to assist with, so that they get their very best chance at success.
What were you doing before fly fishing?
Another lifetime ago, oh yeah, I started out fly fishing as a teenager, as an amateur, like everybody else, just another fly fisher. But it was obsessive, which meant it dictated certain terms of my career. which was I was an art teacher, and so schools that happened to be near some of the best fly fishing water in the state were certainly on the top of my list as to places where I would apply for transfer or promotion to. And so it reads a bit like some of the best fly fishing in the state were the schools where I went to, until at Alexandra I decided that I would then become a full-time professional guide. I could see a gap or a lack of a high-quality academy of learning about fly fishing. There didn't appear to be one in the state of Victoria. So that was, we imagined these things, and that led to forming a business, providing something, and we did it in a way which meant we're either going to do this full on as professionals, give up your day job, this means, let go of the security, wages, all that sort of stuff, live and die by what you do. And that's why we became full-time professionals. We had to live and die by what we did, and we were recognised for that because we were providing the very best in the form of a learning academy, as well as providing the guiding service that everybody was looking for. And we could see the potential of all of this because you could see it in other parts of the world, which led very quickly to guiding in New Zealand and then North America and expanding our business. And that was a little bit of accidental arrangements, because for a couple of months we went without a single customer because the bushfires, and we just offered our clients the opportunity to go to other places like South Island, New Zealand, you know, one of the most amazing fly fishing areas in the world. And so we very quickly did a bit of footwork to be able to change what we were doing very rapidly and still provide services to people, keep the business going. And then we branched out. We needed a fly fishing lodge for accommodation and a base for our operations. In a prior life, which you asked me about as an art teacher, I'd learnt how to build out a mud brick, and so I'd built a big mud brick house at Thornton. And when Dennis Edwards turned up one day, he was an architect, I took him up and showed him my house, and I said, we can build in mud brick. And he said, oh, that's fantastic, because all I ever wanted to do was build a fly fishing lodge. He said, I'm used to doing high-rise buildings, but this is my dream, to architecturally design a fly fishing lodge. And that's how we did it. Dennis came through with the drawings and said, here you are guys, no fee attached, and that called our bluff. So what we had to do was go through with it. We had the drawings, no excuse. So we put everything on the line, and the three of us, David, Anthony and I, just did it with sheer human labour, nothing else. Manoeuvred enormous great big logs and poles into position, filled all the spaces with mud brick and windows, and so we built our own lodge. That in its own right attracted a lot of people who wanted to share in that experience. So we started a syndicate to offer services to people, and very rapidly the syndicate filled up of people who wanted to invest. We made a very simple commercial arrangement where we said, look, we'll provide you with $15,000 worth, which seems a lot of money now, not very much money now, but 15 grand's worth of services for 10. So you invest 10 with us, join the syndicate, we're able to go to the bank and say, oh, righto, well, we're in the middle of building this lodge, we need some more money to finish it. And so our business side of things started to take off. And they were made friends for life. The thing is, one of them said to me recently, I never knew quite what I was doing in buying a syndicate with you. He said, it's either going to be the very best investment I've ever made in my life, or it's going to be the very worst one, and I've blown me 10 grand. So we progressed forward by accident, and design and sheer hard work and human labour, and making 7,000 mud bricks, and with a little old Fergie tractor.
You remember catching, we did talk about that first fish.
I'll tell you another first fish.
Yeah.
So when we designed this drift boat operation, the very first run we did with it, we weren't sure. So we were drifting down the river and we popped into what is known as Leaks Lagoon, which is a big backwater. Nothing happened. We were fishing as we went, casting. Came out around the corner, and I can remember this individual fish to this day. This was the start of our business. One fish. I can do this. I put the fly down, up he came and took it. Yes, I've got him, we can do this, we can do this. And so that inspired us to go on and develop the way we did as a result. And it's all down to one fish, and I can take you to the spot where he rose and took that fly that day. They're indelible.
What do you think of the Goulburn River?
It's a classic. It's a tailwater. It's stunning. It produces cold, clear trout habitat like nowhere else in the state of Victoria. Through the worst of the summer when all the other streams are hot and unsuitable, we've got 12-degree water coming out of the base of Lake Eildon, and it runs all the way down to Yea and beyond. And it's so pristine. The population of platypus in it, I counted 11 in one session, in one day, drifting down the river. So there's an abundance of macrophytes, water weeds, crest beds, all under this clear water, like a forest. You can see the water weeds, and this is all habitat for fish. And it is so pristine, you can see the bottom in 10 or 12 feet of water. And that means, of course, that the fish can see everything else that's going on, including all their food and the insects. So a tailwater below a dam offers a unique experience. It's different to a mountain stream, it's different to a big slow river, but nothing beats the qualities of a tailwater below a big dam like Lake Eildon. It's world class, and I mean that. We've seen rivers all over the world, and it's as good as any. Oh, you can complain about days when you don't catch anything, but on the whole, it's a wonderful fishery.
This job has taken you around the world, hasn't it?
Yeah, so, and this job inspires in all fly fishers adventure. And as you're driving off in the car to go fishing somewhere, the weight of the world lifts off your shoulders and you're going to focus on your fly fishing. And it's an adventure to go to the swampy plains or the Mitamita or Narriel Creek or Jerrimal Creek. All of these places are in the literature there, as everybody's written about, including Tasmania and New Zealand. And so it's a bit of a checklist, you know. What haven't I done now? And one of the things is, before I die, I'm going to fish South Island, New Zealand. And so we guiding there 3 months of the year, January, February and March, was a big slab of our business, and that coincided with the peak times when we were needed as guides here as well. So we had to expand the business. So it grew organically, you might say.
And the boats, how does that...
Well, we started out with Zodiac rafts with a rowing frame on them. There was nothing available in Australia in the Mackenzie style drift boats that were being used in North America. And I made an effort to travel to the States and hook up with Lemoyne Hyde from Hyde Drift Boats. And I took a copy of our DVD and our website address and basically some boxes of flies, knowing that when I spoke fly fishing, we'd be able to talk. And immediately he started showing me how to row a drift boat. All of them are designed to ride high, and when you learn how to manipulate them, a drifting boat is completely different to one that has a motor that drives. So you've got to unlearn everything you knew about it. But basically we row, absolutely silent except for the yapping guide. And then that contact with nature is more complete. So you haven't got smelly fumes or batteries or any other aids for you. It's just a pair of oars, a couple of keen fly fishermen, and the silent lapping of the boat as you drift down the river. And mind you, the guide's working hard because the river's full of hazards, snags and willow trees and overhanging branches. You've got to constantly manipulate the boat. So you need one person totally in control who's looking 200 metres downstream, as well as encouraging the fly fisherman to put his fly in that particular place. And it's all happening. There's a lot going on, and you need professional people doing it. A lot of people think, it looks so easy, you just drift down the river. Think again. A lot of people come very close to drowning when they don't recognise that this is a skill that's absolutely essential before you even attempt anything like this.
How often are you fishing now?
I still get the call back from Anthony. So the business goes on. David retired and I retired, but it doesn't take much, just a phone call and I'll step in and help them. And so I'm still engaged with Anthony, assisting when he needs extra help. He's got some great young blokes guiding for him now. They've all learnt all the stuff I've just talked about, and they're all superb operators. But sometimes when you get overbooked and I need to step in, I do. And in between times, during the week, then I'm just as likely to wander off down the riverbank and have a fish by myself, and I still enjoy it.
Just talk to me about the different flies. Give me a bit of...
Yeah, so fly fishing originated in England, or at least Western civilization as we know it has fly fishing through the work that was done in Britain. And so it was once the province of the aristocracy who owned the rivers. You could fish for salmon or you could fish for trout, but for anybody else to fish, you would be a poacher stealing their fish. So it's been a very highly privileged sport for an elite group of people in England, and that was transposed into Australia when we established stocks of trout in Tasmania and Victoria and New Zealand for that matter. So here's this elite privilege that some people still like to tap into because it's challenging and because it requires an intellectual effort in order to learn all these things and become part of it. It is self-selecting, so it challenges a lot of people like captains of industry, CEOs, lawyers, doctors, all sorts of people who are constantly challenged in a similar fashion in their workday, and they enjoy the challenge of fly fishing as well. But now we've got plumbers and electricians and movie makers and anybody, and you can come up like I did as a 13-year-old kid, wet behind the ears, that made his own fly rods and developed into the sport. Fortunately for Australia, we have absolutely different situations as to privately owned rivers. So we can travel and go anywhere. The adventure is there if you want to take it. You can go pretty much anywhere in Australia and fish, which means it's more egalitarian. It's not elitist at all, that anybody can do this. And the privilege is if you have the intellectual capacity to learn it. It's physical, it's intellectual, it requires concentration and immersion and all those other qualities I talked about. And so they're gripping and they can affect anybody. But what's arisen out of that is the Australian form of fly fishing, which is quite different to that aristocracy in Britain, who are limited to a number of chalk streams which were world famous, but nevertheless narrow in its scope. Now here in Australia, the adventure is open-ended completely, and so we can go anywhere and do almost anything. And there's this cross-fertilisation with New Zealand and North America and all the other you can go to Russia, you can go anywhere, And so fly fishing is a passport, and it can take you wherever you want to go. Not just the narrow inheritance of what we got from early fly fishing from England.
That's good. You still got a bit of time on that?
10 seconds.
Okay, that's good. Cool.
Done.
Sweet.